You've seen them in literally every film you have ever seen, but have you actually ever stopped to think about what they really mean? I'm talking about costumes, pretty dresses we don't necessarily think about, but that are actually a key component of storytelling. In this video, I'll go over the 4 storytelling superpowers that costumes can have. Let me know in the comments if you can think of any more. Before I start, let me just say that not every film relies that heavily on storytelling through costumes, and that's okay. Films are different. You can always find films where very little thought has been put into the costumes. I'm just talking about the ones where there was a conscious effort. Let's start with the first one of the most key things that costumes can do. Let me ask you something. Do you have any idea who this guy is? What about this guy? Chances are you know exactly who they are, and that's mainly because of the costumes. Some costumes literally act as a name tag for the character. Even for characters who aren't as famous as them, you can usually have a rough idea of whether they're good guys or bad guys with the costumes. In fact, what's interesting isn't necessarily the costumes in themselves, but rather the contrast that they create between one group of characters and another group of characters. What I mean is that any costume in itself does not say anything, it's the way it's contrasted with the other costumes. For example, a particular color palette might have a meaning in one film, but a very different meaning in another film. The point isn't the color or the costume, the point is the contrast. This reliance on costumes to provide contrast probably comes from really old types of theatre, like ancient Roman theatre. The point is, you don't want to get characters mixed up and you don't want to be confused as to who's a bad guy and who's a good guy. Even now that our stories don't rely on stock characters that much, we do still need that contrast because it helps us establish types. This is what Stanley Cavell has to say about it. For what makes someone a type is not his similarity with other members of that type, but his striking separateness from other people. The point is, there's not just one look for a goodie, a baddie, a comic relief, a femme fatale. The main thing is that you look different from the other characters. Now, there are some works where the visual contrast is not brought by costumes but by other things. Example, in Orange is the New Black, most characters wear the same exact prison uniform, but I'm pretty sure you don't get them confused. In this case, the contrast is brought by makeup, hair, and tattoos. Let's move on to costume storytelling superpower number 2. Have a look at these 2 girls for me. Do you see a difference between them? How about these 2? What about these 2? I think you get my point. Costumes can help us visualize the evolution of a character. The makeovers that I've just shown you are a particularly visible example of this. In films with makeovers, usually the costume changes first and then the character's psychology evolves. Example, the very beloved The Devil Wears Prada. I cannot wait to see the second one, by the way. Andy goes from being frumpy to stylish, but she also goes from being slightly naive to ambitious and even ruthless. At the end of the movie, we find her somewhere in between. She's not a fashionista, but she doesn't exactly make your eyes hurt either. That's a really clear example of how costumes can show and even influence the character's personal transformation. But character evolution doesn't necessarily require a makeover. Example, in Roman Holiday, Audrey Hepburn plays a princess who escapes from her duties and spends a day in Rome. During that day, she can finally relax and become just like any ordinary girl, and the costume shows that. She wears pretty much the same costume throughout, but she changes her shoes, cuts her hair, rolls up the sleeves, and gets rid of the little cravatty thing she had. Basically, the costume mirrors where she's at during her journey. Now, the next point is a little bit more subtle and a little bit less widely used, so I won't spend that much time on it. This storytelling superpower is about how costumes can help structure a film. The way we normally experience this is particularly stunning costumes for a particularly climactic scene. Famous example of that is the ball gown in Cinderella during the ball scene. That really tells your brain, hello, wake up, this is the important moment of the movie. Other than set the scene for an important part of the movie, costumes can also help you understand the order of events, but more importantly, they can create a certain feeling or emotion, such as dramatic irony. This is the case in Vertigo. In this movie, one of the first time that the main character sees the character played by Kim Novak, she's wearing this very classic light grey skirt suit. They then fall in love, and at a crucial scene around the middle of the film, which I am trying very hard not to spoil even though I really want to, she wears the same suit, and that creates a really tragic effect. Last but not least, costumes can be an amazing way of conveying the way that the character wishes to be perceived. Not how they are, but how they want others to see them. What's often most interesting is the disconnect between the way the character wishes to be seen and how they actually are. Very noticeable example, the characters of Betty and Joan in Mad Men. They kind of dress opposite. Betty often wears cool pastel colors, big fluffy 50s skirts, and gives the appearance of an elegant traditional housewife, whereas Joan appears very confident and, modern with shorter, more form-fitting and bright-colored clothes. However, even though both those characters are sort of ultimately creating costumes for themselves, they also have a vulnerability and a personality that goes deeper than that. Similarly, the movie A Letter to Three Wives is all about how three women navigate society's expectations of them. The character of Deborah is not from a very elegant background and tries to make a kind of makeshift dress out of an old dress for herself to go to the club, and there's a hole in the dress, to cut the story short. That dress literally represents the fragility of this social persona she's putting on to attempt to fit into the group of her husband's friends. What's interesting with this point is that there's a contrast between the character as we perceive them and the character as they want to be perceived. Sometimes this contrast can be huge. Example in the Addams Family Values. Debbie dresses in an exaggerated feminine way, wearing yet again pastels and light colors that give her a bit of an angelic appearance, while she's more or less a serial killer. Similarly, in Out of the Past, Jane Greer's femme fatale character initially appears in angelic white, and in the last scene, she wears an unusual looking hat that looks a little like a nun's habit. These deliberate contrasts are exterior manifestations of these characters' duplicity and facades. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe so that you don't miss when I next post. Now, let's wrap up. Basically, costumes are an amazing tool for visual storytelling, mainly thanks to their use of contrast. They can create contrast between how a character used to be and what they've become, between one character and another character, between how they appear and how they really are, and they can tell us how to read a film and what the main important scenes are. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.